Welcome back. Beyond the New and all that jazz. It's time to do the final wrap-up catch-up or recent reads part 4, 5, whatever. This is wrapping up the books that I read in September. After that, I will be all caught up and I can wrap up the books that I read in October, hopefully next week. So without further ado, we'll just jump straight into it. In September, I read 12 books, totaling 6,209 pages and about 73 and a half hours of audiobook listening. And again, it was another really good, solid reading month for me, giving me an average rating of around 4 stars, which we love. Like, there's nothing wrong with a good, solid 4-star month. So as always, we will go in ascending star order from my least favorite to my most favorite read of the month. So first off, my least favorite read of the month was a 3-star read, and that was The City in Glass by Nghi. And this one, I don't think it was an objectively bad book or anything like that. It was fine. It's just not the kind of book that I really gravitate towards. I thought that maybe this would be my in with Nghi because it's more fantasy, or it sounded like it was going to be. And we all know that fantasy is like just my jam, right? So I was kind of cautiously optimistic, but just the kind of ethereal vibes of it all, just like what's real, what's really happening. It was just really bizarre. It was kind of this story between the demon of this city and this angelic being and their kind of love that spanned millennia. Like, I don't know. It was just bizarre. And then when it was over, I was like, okay. So, I mean, I read it. It's a thing that I have read. Moving on, the other 3-star read I had in September was Fevered Star by Rebecca Roanhorse. And this is book 2 in the Between Earth and Sky trilogy. And I read Black Sun book 1 and I just loved it. It was so good. The world was so cool. It was so dark and like twisted and just not what I expected. And then book 2 really undermined a lot of that and kind of, okay, Jujubee. She got tangled in my backpack straps. It kind of undermined the stakes that it had set up for itself. And there was some just weird stuff with like characters who had been set up to hate magic, who are now maybe involved in magic. And it just felt all over the place and just was not the awesome, like pulse pounding breed that I loved in Black Sun. I don't think it was bad, but I just think because book 1 was so good, in comparison, it just seemed more lackluster, which was a little bit disappointing. It's still like worth reading, I would say. If you really love Black Sun, I think that you could push through and read the rest of the trilogy, unless you just really didn't like something particular about it. But I do also have my critiques of the finale, but that will be in my October wrap-up. So stay tuned for full thoughts on that entire trilogy. But with that being said, we'll mosey right along to my 3.25-star read of the month, which was Rise of Empire by Michael J. Sullivan. This is book 2 in the Ryuria Revelations series, which is the first series published in the world, but the last series chronologically so far. He is doing a post-Ryuria series now. He's been teasing it for a while in his kind of Kickstarters that he's been doing for some of his books. I think the reason why it is even that high for me is because I already have such buy-in to this world from reading Legends of the First Empire and The Rise and Fall. And if I didn't have that, I don't know if I'd be as intrigued, because I think the parts that I like the most about this series is looking at how the lore has changed over time, how history has been written by the victors, and looking for some key god manipulative characters that kind of lurk in the background all the time. And so like that's what keeps me going in the series. It's not really the series itself. So, I mean, if you really like that kind of buddy cop episodic feel and you're just looking for that kind of fun series, then I think Ryuria Revelations would really do it for you. But if you're looking for a little bit more like uniqueness to world building and more epicness, then I would say Legends of the First Empire is still the best he's written for me personally. And then up next, my first 3.5-star read that I'll talk about is The Crippled God by Steven Erikson. This is book 10, the conclusion to the Malazan Book of the Fallen. And I won't say too much here because I will do a full series kind of spoiler-free, I think, retrospective, like should you read style video. But just with where we went, what the ultimate thing that happened at the end of this series was, it just wasn't totally worth the journey for me personally. Like, I'm not mad that I did it. I find a lot of kind of fun and interest in just reading series and books that have been kind of genre defining in their own way or have these kind of followings, cult or otherwise. And so I'm glad that I read it because now I know. However, just unless you're one of those people that really just like somebody taking 5 pages to say what could have been said in 2 sentences, And if you really like people sitting around kind of having these circular philosophical conversations a lot, then I don't know. Like, yes, the world building is expansive and cool, but there's expansive and cool world building in a lot of series. And particularly for Malazan, it's very Dungeons and Dragons inspired, especially at the beginning. And there are some very clear parallels that I just won't go into all of them now because I'll do it in my series retrospective. But I don't know. Like, I'm not mad about the ending, but I am slightly underwhelmed, shall we say. But I will save full kind of retrospective thoughts for that future video. Just leave it to say I have finished Malazan and I mostly enjoyed the conclusion. I don't know if it could have ever lived up to the hype that people had been setting it up for. And I think I realized after book 2 that I wasn't sure if this was going to be completely the series that I would have wanted it to be, and that's fine. Then my other 3.5 star read of the month was Mistress of Lies by K.M. Enright, and this is a new release that just came out, and I think it's a victim of marketing because it was really selling itself as this like kind of epic fantasy vampire style story, and it's just not. Like there is blood magic and there is like a character who does consume blood to live for longer, but it's more blood magic, less vampire. And like when you look at the special editions and the covers, it looks like it has all these gothic vibes, and just I never really got the gothic vibes from the book itself, and it never felt vampire. And then it also had this murder mystery plot, but we didn't spend a whole lot of time with the murder mystery plot, and it was also like flirting with rebelling against the evil lord, and so I think it was just doing too much for a first book. Like the world is cool, I love some blood magic, so I'm like intrigued, but it just kind of like, I don't know, it just was not everything that I wanted it to be. It wasn't this like luscious gothic vampire fantasy that I wanted it to be. And then it also didn't lean hard enough into the murder mystery that I wanted it to be. So it was just like, I don't know, it was just a lot. Definitely doing that jack of all trades, master of none style thing. Then we'll move on, and I have one 3.75 star read, and that was Blood of Dragons by Robin Hobb. And I believe that is the conclusion to the Rainwilds Chronicles. The Rainwild Chronicles was an interesting time. We do learn a lot of really cool lore, especially about the skill magic and dragons in this final book of that quartet, but I don't really love the cast of characters that much. There is this group of especially keepers that I find a little bit tedious and a little bit annoying to follow because they start getting kind of like too matchy, and that's just not my vibe. And then the dragons were kind of like the worst dragons ever. They do get a little bit better towards the end, but just like, I don't know, like, and I don't know that it needed to be a quartet. I don't know that it needed to be as long as it was. It felt just too long and yet not enough simultaneously. Like, I don't know. I'm just very conflicted about the Rainwild Chronicles. Like, what holds it up for me is just the cool lore and learning more about how this world works, especially with the dragons and the elderlings, and getting all of that ancient lore from Kelsingra is like, but the rest of it is mid. Like, I don't know how nicer to say it. Like, it's fine. If you're reading The Realm of the Elderlings, you obviously have to read it because it gives you really important lore, but so far, my favorites now have been the Fitz books, which, who would have thunk? Like, Tawny Man, God tier. Like, maybe one of my favorite trilogies of all time. So far, Fitz and the Fool has been great. I need to read book 2 this month, but, like, book 1, towards the end, also gave some really exciting things. Just, I don't know. The Live Ship Traders, because of some stuff at the ending, was, like, soured for me. And then Rainbow Chronicles just isn't my favorite thing ever, so, oh well. Moving on, we jump straight up into 4.5 star reads of the month. And the first one that I'll talk about is What the River Knows by Isabel Ibanez. This is the beginning. I don't know if it's a trilogy or duology. I think book 2 recently came out. But this is it feels like The Mummy, basically. I know a lot of, like, when you look at the reviews, people are like, how dare you compare this to The Mummy? It's nothing like The Mummy. But what their argument is that the romantic relationship that's kind of depicted is not Evie and Rick O'Connell. And yeah, it's not. But it's that kind of 1920s, 1930s Cairo where we're kind of going along on these different excavations of ancient Egypt, and there's magic involved with ancient Egypt. And there seems to be somebody who's looking for the tomb of, I want to say, was it Nefertiti? Whatever. Cleopatra? No, Cleopatra. They're looking for the tomb. And then there's like shenanigans that ensue, family drama. Like, it's just so much fun. And so I think that fast-paced action-adventure vibe and that kind of 1920s adjacent, slightly magical flavored Egypt is just, I eat that stuff up. Like, ancient Egyptian mythology is literally my jam. I love it so much. And so it's just hard, you know what I mean? it's hard for me to not to love something, and I'm really curious how the sequel is, or if it's a conclusion to the duel. I don't know. Regardless, I think What the River Knows is a lot of fun. It is YA, but who cares? Like, anyways, we'll just keep moseying right along. The next book I'll talk about, or I guess the next two books I'll talk about, are The City of Brass and The Kingdom of Copper. I gave The City of Brass 4.5 stars and The Kingdom of Copper 5 stars. These are the first two books in the Daevabad trilogy, and Elle from Elliot Brooks and I did a whole full series spoilers video that I believe is going to be available on World Hoppers. So I will link that if it is available or whatever, if you want more spoilery thoughts. This world is so cool. And this trilogy, I have finished it, is probably one of my favorites of all time. Just the way the world building is done, the way that you like fall in love with these characters, the complex political situations that just are ambiguous and you can kind of see where people are coming from. The villains are fantastic. Like, it's just so good. It also is very inspired by like Middle Eastern folklore with jinn and different kinds of magical creatures. So it's just so good. It's so good. I will say that there is one character, Daevabad, we'll call him because he sucks. I hate him. He is like the most gaslighting, emotionally manipulative POS, like archetype of that really gross alpha male character who's also kind of emotionally abusive. So I hate him. So that was where the half star got kind of dinged for me in book one, because I just hated following him and I really did not buy the relationship between him and the female main character, Nari. I hate him. I hate him. So that's the one piece of it that I was like, But this is not by any stretch of the imagined romanticy. This is very much political fantasy at its finest. So if you have been waiting to pick up the Daevabad trilogy like I was, this is your PSA to pick it up ASAP, because it is phenomenal. Like, it is so freaking good. The way that I love Ali's aid, and the way that Nari slowly grew on me, and the way that Zainab grew on me, like, there's just so many characters that are phenomenal, and the villains are just, it's all so good. It's so good. And the magic and the way that everything works, it's just so complex and rich. And it's one of those series where like you get enough information that you feel like there's all of this deep lore there, but you're not necessarily pounded over the head with it like you are in Malazan. So it's enough, and it doesn't overstay its welcome. The twists and the turns, the pacing, it's just phenomenal. But I'll stop gushing about that, and you can go watch a full spoiler-filled discussion if you would like to do so, because I know that I'm very late to the Daevabad party. So with that, I'll move on to my next 5-star read of the month, which was The Hunger of the Gods by John Gwynne. This is book 2 in the Bloodsworn saga. And this one just really ramped up the Gods Among Us shenanigans. It was just so fun. And this is the book where at the end there's this kind of cliffhanger that happens that made me realize, oh no, wait, I really do care about these characters. Because at first I was kind of like, oh, these characters are fun. Like, I'm having a good time. Like, whatever, it's fine. But then at the end of this one, I was like, no. And I've since finished the trilogy. So in my next month wrap up, you'll also hear kind of more cohesive thoughts about the entire trilogy as a whole. But just The Hunger of the Gods in and of itself is just so good. There is multi-POV, very Norse-inspired world. It does continue with the thing that kind of grates on my nerves, where whenever we're talking about thinking about something or it's in the mind, it's always in the thought cage. And every time we're doing anything sexual, it's humping. So like those do continue, but it's kind of like comical to me at this point, because it kind of became endearing, and just like whenever I would hear or see those things, it was like, oh yeah, I'm reading Bloodsworn Saga, it's totally fine. Like so I'm like, I don't know, starting to have Stockholm syndrome with those phrases, because I guess whatever, it's fine. If you at all enjoyed The Shadow of the Gods, this just ramps up the stakes and the shenanigans to like completely bonkers levels, and just it will give you so many more reasons to be invested emotionally in these characters, and just, it's so good, and I can't sing its praises more highly. I will also say, if you're somebody like me who read The Faithful and the Fallen Quartet, and it wasn't necessarily your favorite thing ever, this was like, knocked it out of the park, home run, so fantastic. And so even if you've tried other works by him and you didn't necessarily love them, I think this is on a whole nother level of his ability to craft a story and get you invested. And I would still highly recommend you check it out. Then the last two books that I'll talk about, the first one is A Sorceress Comes to Call by Kingfisher. I am very much on the bandwagon with this one, like the rest of booktube. I feel like because everybody has been screaming about this book for the last couple months since it came out, and it really deserves it. It has this very unique, like twisted dark fairy tale style story. There are horror elements that will kind of creep up on you and you'll be like, we really just went there? And yeah, we really just went there. We are following this girl. Oh my God, I can't remember her name. And her mother is a sorceress. Hi, Juji. And her daughter. The mother is this sorceress who seems to be able to control people with her magic. And she is interested in finding basically a sugar daddy because she doesn't like the life to which she has become accustomed. And so we kind of go from there. She finds a man to target, takes her daughter with her, and like really dark things ensue. And there is just, it's so good. And this, okay, Jujubi, okay, yeah, hi. It's just so intense where we go with it. So if you at all like dark fairy tale or kind of like family dramas or, I don't know, it's just phenomenal. I think that it just really deserves all the love and hype it's been getting. And if you've been waiting to check it out, you should definitely do so. I just really, it's so good. And it will keep you on the edge of your seat with what that crazy sorceress is going to do next and how on earth could we possibly deal with her. Like, it's so good. And then the final thing that I'll talk about, or my favorite read of the month, was Somewhere Beyond the Sea by TJ Klune. This is the sequel to The House in the Cerulean Sea. And it's just, at first I was a little bit nervous because I didn't think that The House in the Cerulean Sea, why would it ever need a sequel? But there's the addition of a new kid to our crew. We are really dealing with the fallout of what happened at the end of The House in the Cerulean Sea and the Department in Care of Magical Youth who are kind of in charge of the facility. Just like, it's so good. And just the queerness of it all, the found family aspects, the othering that you experience, and the joy that you can feel when a community surrounds you and sticks up for you, even though they didn't need to. Like, there's just so many themes that resonate with me as a gay man existing in the United States of America in the year of our Lord 2024. And it's all wrapped up in such a wholesome messaging and story with these adorable magical children. Like, I can't recommend it more highly. So if you were putting it off because you were nervous like I was about, oh my gosh, how could it ever possibly live up to The House in the Cerulean Sea? It's just as amazing and wholesome. The characters are still just as cute as ever. Chauncey and Lucy and everybody else. It's just so good. And I need more people to go back, read The House in the Cerulean Sea, and then read Somewhere Beyond the Sea, and then come scream with me in the comments because it deserves it. That will do it for the books that I got to in the month of September. Please, as always, if you would like to chat about any of these, or especially if you want to chat about spoilers, just say spoilers, hit enter a bunch of times, and let's talk about it. If you just want to leave an emoji, leave some kind of sea-based emoji for Somewhere Beyond the Sea. And other than that, please like this video if you liked it. Subscribe if you want to see more bookish shenanigans like this from me. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye!